I have been using Canon cameras for past 14 years for video work. I tried couple Sony cameras for a couple months, and actually I did one whole year with Fuji X-T3 camera. So this will be partial Nikon ZR review from the point of view of Canon user, because I only have this camera for 3 days, and during those 3 days I have limited time to try it. And second, I only check this camera in a way I am doing shooting, so this will not be the showcase or ad for all the features this camera has. So the main question for me is, if I'm forced to use Nikon ZR for my usual job, am I going to be in any trouble? And my usual gigs are weddings, but bear in mind Serbian weddings, which is like Battle for Stalingrad, only without dying. Well, mostly without dying. I also do corporate events and presentation. I'm shooting a product videography, which include both showcase of the products or making of those products. I work both on gimbal and handhelds. I also use sliders sometimes, and I'm never using the long clips. Most of the time my clips are less than 1 minute long. During wedding I only have a couple occasions when I need to have clips that are a couple minutes long, and maybe just a couple times per year I need to have one clip of maybe half an hour. So overheating is not an issue for me. I care about reliability, good controls, usable flat profile. This is not log or raw. Autofocus, auto everything else if possible. Not large file size, affordable memory cards, small body size including small lenses, internal microphone, grip, viewfinder and photography, because so many jobs these days are hybrid. I don't care really about raw or log files. Anything above 4K 60, although 4K 120 is really nice if it is good and usable. Ability to use external monitors, rigs or similar. Any other camera feature that trying to drag me into cinema, this or that, when I need like more equipment or more people, so I'm not interested in those. So reliability is most important feature for me on camera. I don't want any lens error, stuck controls, freezed camera or battery that is going to just turn off camera without any warning. Obviously I don't have enough time to try all of this, but Nikon being company so big and so long in this business, I think they're capable to making a reliable camera. Canon is often a company that bring features to their camera the last. They're conservative in some ways, but that is why Canon cameras are extremely reliable. I'm talking extremely reliable, literally no issues for these 14 years. And this is very important for me because often I only have a chance to take a shot once. So I found out that Nikon ZR, despite not having many buttons, have option to set everything to my needs. To be honest, I came across some button and shortcut options that I would like to see on my R6, R8 or V1. I use default flat profile on ZR, no log or cine or anything similar, also no raw for me. I can make a separate video about this, but long story short, you really need to care much more about light in your scene. If you need 15 stops of dynamic range, you're probably in the wrong spot for shooting. You cannot rely on fixing in the post so much, and you need to adapt your contrast, saturation and sharpness depending of are you shooting landscape, people or objects. So they are not like one solution, which means shooting in log and then adding later in the post. This is not good workflow for me, and I believe many people making those mistakes without trying to use just some good flat profile that is properly set up for the occasion. The good news, I found flat profile in Nikon ZR that is what I want to see. Autofocus on Nikon ZR is great. Is it better than Canon? Well, on paper Canon should be better, but the Canon autofocus is not really perfect, especially when it jumps from one head to another. I didn't have a chance to try Nikon ZR in this situation, which is like the best example for this is dancing on the podium on the wedding. Canon is not great in this situation because changing head so much, but what I found for those 3 days during this limited time, I can say autofocus on Nikon ZR is really fast, reliable, precise. It's not hunting too much. I can say this is modern camera when it comes to autofocus. We live in time with fast turnarounds, vertical videos, one-man band, and that is why I try to do as much things as possible directly in camera to have a file prepared already in camera. So that means using anything auto in camera when it's available or useful. And the big thing for me is auto white balance, because for the past 10 years we have really bad quality LEDs, and those LEDs introducing tint that I don't like. So when I set auto white balance, I can maybe receive wrong warmth of the footage, but at least tint is corrected, and it is easier for me to correct footage later to make it a little bit warmer or colder. That is why in the past 10 years I'm avoiding to set kelvins for shooting unless I'm 100% sure the light is uniform in some place. And I can say that the auto white balance on Nikon ZR is really good, really useful. Obviously in this winter footage you see it is a little bit colder, but any camera will give footage like this. It is not a big deal to add a little bit warmth. When it comes to auto exposure, I'm not using this feature so much, but sometimes this feature is life-saving for me, and I can say the Nikon ZR can offer you decent auto exposure in some situation when you need that. I'm very disappointed with the file size for 4K 50 or 4K 60 videos, which are 3 times larger than file size on Canon R6, R8 or V1. What this means in real life: one wedding from the Nikon ZR in my situation would be close to ½ terabyte, and one wedding in 4K 50 with the Canon for me is around 150 or even less gigabytes. This is the smallest option for this resolution and frame rate. So Nikon, you don't need files as big as this. This is a big minus for me, and it is not even a problem on computer storage. It is a problem when it comes to camera cards. And speaking of cards, ZR using CF Express and micro SD cards. I only have micro SD cards to try, and obviously this camera is limited with the resolutions and the options when you're using micro SD, but for what I need, micro SD was good enough. But still, the problem is you certainly need to remove battery if you want to remove micro SD card. Also, those big holes for CF Express and battery will be problem if your micro SD card will fall in. But the biggest problem I understand, because I wasn't able to try, is that you cannot record simultaneously files on CF Express and micro SD. Correct me please in comments if I'm wrong. What that means: in my Canon R6, each card costs 20 euros, and when I do one wedding, I'm only filling these cards with 50%, and I have backup on second card that is recorded simultaneously. I don't have big file size, I have backup, and I have cheap cards. In Nikon ZR case, I would need 512 CF Express card at minimum, which cost at least 200 euros or more, and still I cannot have backup on micro SD card as far as I understand. So I understand configuration of cards on this camera, because this camera offers so high resolutions, frame rate, RAW, everything else, but in my case situation is not really practical when it comes to memory cards. Nikon ZR is a small camera which is really good for gimbal use. Which is not good for handheld use is because this camera doesn't have a big grip, especially if you try to use this camera with a bigger lens. And speaking about handheld use, this camera doesn't have a viewfinder, which can be really useful for handheld use and also for checking exposure during sunny days. Yes, Nikon ZR has big, beautiful, very informative screen, which is one of the biggest I saw on cameras, but let's be honest, my brain almost didn't notice this screen is so big, because we use so many screens during the day, our brain is just adapting. That is why I have to say, yes, this screen is beautiful, very useful on this camera, but I would rather have deeper grip and viewfinder. And speaking of the size of the camera, the small body is not enough if you don't have offer of the small and affordable lenses. So Canon has the whole range between 16mm and 50mm of the small, cheap, really good lenses for gimbal use. And I use all of them, and they're really useful, really nice to work with on small body like R8 and small gimbal like RS3 Mini from DJI. So this package is just beautiful. I use it on several travel jobs when I have to pack really light. And this is why Canon still beats ZR in this range, because despite ZR is not having a big body, the lenses on the Nikon is not that small. There are not so many cheap plastic light small options, and even when the Nikon makes some for example light lens, that lens is often like really big, really long. I don't know why. In this case, for gimbal use, I think the Canon is a better choice if you are targeting to use really small lens, small gimbals, small bodies. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to test the microphone properly on this camera, but this microphone should be really good because it has a lot of codec options, and also it has options for direction, and internal microphone on camera is really useful, can be really useful. For example, if your sound on some event or wedding is not directional, external microphones will actually make worse sound than using internal microphones, especially when internal microphone is really good, like Canon V1. On paper, this microphone should be like really good, but I didn't have a chance to test this in more situations. Finally, for reasons we need auto this and that, we also need to have options to use video cameras for photography, because so much gigs these days are hybrid. Nikon ZR is actually a really good photo camera because it has completely separate photo setup, big switch for changing from photo to video, and everything works great. But this camera doesn't have a mechanical shutter. And this is not like a Nikon Z9, where Nikon ZI has really fast sensor that doesn't need a mechanical shutter. This camera will introduce any problem that electronic shutter will make on any other cameras. So in that regard, Nikon ZR can be decent photography option, but only if this is your second or third body. So if you're buying ZR to be your primary video camera and backup photo camera, is going to be okay, but do not buy this camera to be your primary photography camera. During testing, I only had a 24-70 f4 lens. This lens doesn't have optical stabilization. Camera has in-body stabilization, and all footage you're seeing during this video is only in-body stabilization. Handheld, no adding any stabilization in post. IBIS is doing a really good job, but obviously do not expect miracles. Also, it is very useful to switch between FX and DX mode or cropped mode, and I cannot see the difference in quality between these two modes. I also cannot see any problems with 4K 120 footage, and as you can see, even Full HD 240 FPS footage looks really nice. As expected, camera is giving really nice results up to ISO 1280, but above that is much more noisy. And to answer my question, am I going to be in any trouble if I'm forced to use Nikon ZR for any of my gigs? And I would say no. Does this mean I will switch to Nikon? Well, obviously no. Canon is just better in this, especially when it comes to lenses. But I didn't have any problem with setting up this camera. I only need minutes to set up to my needs, and most of them was looking into menus that I'm not familiar with. I can also rely on in-body stabilization, autofocus, auto white balance, and even auto exposure when I need that. So I think the Nikon is a little bit lost when it comes to promotion of this camera. They are selling too much RAW, RED, log, cinema, 6K, 8K, and things like that. And I think that is wrong. They just need to call their photographers and tell them, look, we made amazing video cameras for you. And you already have Nikon Z lenses just mounted to this camera. This is going to be really easy, even if you never did video before. I know so many Nikon users, they are looking into Panasonic or Sony when it comes to video, and there is no reason for that. So Nikon, just explain to your user, here is really affordable video camera that can be decent second or third photography body, and you will sell much more ZR bodies.